Now, Marco's arrival in Wano is a lot bigger than people think. Now, with the recent events of the last chapter, I feel like this is a good time to talk about Marco in every aspect and way in what he brings to the table in terms of how his presence alone changes things for the Alliance and their chances against Kaido. Now, going into the war, we always knew that Kaido had an overwhelming number on his side, and even more so now since his alliance with Big Mom. But with the events of the recent chapter, it seems that the forces on Luffy's side is increasing, while the forces on Kaido's side has gone down by a bit. And by that, I am specifically talking about the Big Mom pirates. Marco hints towards the possibility that they might be stuck down there till Wano is saved, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because we always thought that Smoothie was going to show off in this arc, but I guess not. And so with Marco back in action and him being the biggest ally to the Alliance, this changes things a lot. Now, even though Marco is not Yonko level by any means, we know that he has a lot more than just combat prowess, right? I mean, his reputation as the former right hand to Whitebeard speaks volumes in of itself, and I don't think it's a stretch to say that Marco is the strongest person in the Alliance right now. Yes, I've had Luffy at the top, but with Marco back in action, I think that changes. And again, I don't think it's a stretch to say this either, based on this man's portrayal in the entire series. The only commander to fight admirals in an equal exchange was the right hand man to Whitebeard, who was the strongest man and has an extremely powerful mythical devil fruit. One of the only 4 confirmed in the series, Marco has so much on his name, it's hard not to put him at the top of the Alliance right now. His feats in Marineford makes the statement even more valid, and even when you go back to the Payback War, the fact that overcoming Marco and the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates was what was needed for Blackbeard to attain Yonko status says a lot. And the fact that he was able to survive that even though he lost definitely puts more on his name, because you would expect Blackbeard to kill some of these guys given the nature of that battle, right? And then you even had moments like when Shanks tried to recruit him on his crew. So again, Marco being in the Alliance is a game changer. Again, not so much to the point that they will definitely win, but enough to make some difference. Now, I find it very interesting that Marco has the exact fruit type as Kaido and pretty much his entire crew, right? Zoans. This makes me believe that not only does he counter them to some degree, given that he has a devil fruit that is at the very peak of the zone class, but I also think that he has a lot of key information on how to defeat them, given that, you know, he's one of them. Again, given his position on Whitebeard's ship, I wouldn't be surprised if he has intel on Kaido's invulnerable body or immortality. We know Kaido has been defeated several times, and even before the time skip, we saw that Kaido was actually chasing Whitebeard during Marineford for reasons that we're not aware of. Obviously, he got intercepted by Shanks, but I wouldn't be surprised if one of the losses he took was from Whitebeard. And Marco being on that crew, you know, on the Whitebeard pirates, he would know this, and this would give more depth to why Kaido was stated to have challenged the Yonkos and the Marines. I think it makes a lot of sense that the Yonko that he challenged, or one of the Yonkos that he challenged, was probably Whitebeard. Given Whitebeard's title as the strongest man, and we know Kaido is someone that values strength, it makes sense that he would want to test his own strength against someone who had a world title like Whitebeard. And also maybe because Whitebeard was the only person that could have killed him. So in terms of information and knowledge and just history between the Yonkos, Marco should be very knowledgeable, as he's witnessed these things while he was sailing with Whitebeard. And I wouldn't be surprised if he knew Kaido's origin story or why he's stated to be a creature. We know that Whitebeard and Kaido were on rocks. I'd say it makes perfect sense for Whitebeard to tell his crew about certain things he knew about the other members during his time on there, because Marco knew about Miss Bakken being on the same crew as Whitebeard, which is heavily hinted to be rocks. And even in this chapter, Marco mentioned something very interesting when he was talking to Neko, and basically Neko tells him that the raid is taking place on Onigashima, and then Marco replies by saying, oh, they're calling that separate little island Onigashima now. It's almost like this was a place he knew beforehand and a place that was called by a different name however long ago. It does seem that Marco knows something. So I feel like we're going to get a lot of info dumps from Marco pertaining to the events that could have happened in the past relating to Kaido, giving more depth to Kaido and of course history and lore. And again, this all ties together because Marco was sailing on a Yonko's crew, and seemingly one of the more active ones at that. Not like Big Mom, where a lot of her commanders on her crew are stationary. Now, there's really only 2 individuals that are above him in strength, and that's Big Mom and that's Kaido. Everyone else are individuals that he can defeat or individuals that are on his level. And one of the more interesting fighters on the opposing side and a potential matchup is King. And this is also been consensus in the community ever since the recent chapter for several reasons. First of all, Marco pretty much did the same thing to the Big Mom pirates that King did, which was to topple the Big Mom pirate ship off the waterfall. King and Marco have very similar zone devil fruits, both have flying zone types, Marco being a mythical and King being an ancient, and obviously they also have very similar fire aesthetic with their devil fruits. You know, King seems to have some sort of fire ability, which could be a byproduct of his race or devil fruit. We don't know. And Marco has the flames of revival, which gives him insane regeneration, and status wise both King and Marco are right hands to the Yonko, so you have all these similar abilities and aspects. It's very easy to have them as a matchup list because of these similarities. Now I do think that King and Marco will get into a scuffle, but I don't think it's going to be a fight that will come to a conclusion, but more so just a passing clash or something. I still think that King will fight Zoro, or Zoro will defeat King, mainly just because the Straw Hats still have ways to grow and the story is focused around them. So you don't want other stagnant characters to sort of steal potential growth from the Straw Hats, but I definitely won't rule out the possibility that Marco could defeat King, but personally I don't think it's gonna go that way. But I would definitely like a conversation between these two, like some trash talk between first mates, or with maybe Marco stating why he has the superior bird fruit, you know, something of that sort. But this is going to be good given the characters involved in this arc on the opposing side, Big Mom and Kaido. I think it's fair that Marco will go all out or show his true potential, maybe during the fight against Kaido or maybe against someone else. And Marco seems to be really advanced with his devil fruit, and the reason I say this is because during Marineford he's done things that we haven't seen from any other zone user in the show. And I've made a separate video talking about this, whereas Marco has so much control over his zone transformation that he can choose only specific parts of his body that he wants to change into a phoenix. And again, this was during Marineford, and this is the case for the majority of Marineford, whereas he only turned his arms into wings because that granted him flight and mobility without actually having to transform all the way. And he's able to do this in rapid succession as shown with Kizaru, where he intercepts Kizaru's attack in partial, then afterwards goes into full phoenix form, most likely to use its regeneration to its full potential while taking on Kizaru's beams, and then switches back into partial where it's just his wings, in which he then proceeds to attack Kizaru with a kick. So with Marco, it seems that he's able to switch back and forth really quickly, which is a lot different to the usual zone users that we see, who in most cases just stay in hybrid form or a specific form. And talking about hybrid form, I think Marco hasn't actually shown us his hybrid form yet, and the reason I'm saying I think is because it's very tricky with partial transformation that he does. But if we go by the verbatim definition of hybrid, Marco's hybrid is still something that we haven't seen, because hybrid is a combination of both creature and the person. So Marco should have a transformation that looks a lot like Pal's hybrid form. Now the closest thing to hybrid that we've seen from Marco is when he attacked Akainu with Vista. In this scene he is shown with wings and the talons, but again his face isn't changed, which makes me think that he's just using partial transformation on multiple parts of his body. So again, with Marco it's very tricky just because of how his fruit works. Now there's also something very interesting about mythical zones specifically, and that is the secondary ability that is gained. And so with Marco, apart from just turning into a bird, he also has the flames of revival. And what's very interesting about Marco specifically, again this could tie into his mastery, is that he's able to use the flames of revival without actually having to transform into a phoenix. The flames are something that he can control while he is in base form. He's shown this time and time again during Marineford, like when he created a wall of fire to block Akainu, and also prior when he got Sea Stone cuffed by Onigumo. Kizaru pierces him with some lasers, but he applies the flames without actually turning into a beast. And we saw that he can actually affect other people with his flames. So I could see Marco using his ability to heal Luffy and the others when they do get injured during this war. And that also ties to him being a doctor as well. But going back to my previous point about Marco using a specific trait of his mythical in base form, I think this could also apply to Kaido as well, where he is channeling the perks from his dragon form without actually having to turn into a dragon. And I think the anime showed something like where Kaido changed the weather and was then able to use lightning in his attacks in base form. Again, I think if anything this shows mastery towards one's devil fruit. And talking about mastery, I think Marco is most likely awakened because of the control he's shown with the fruit, and also because of how long he's had the fruit. And with mythical, I feel like awakening is going to be really special with them, because apart from just the physical enhancement that regular zones get, I think think Mythicals will also get an amplification on the secondary ability that they do have. So with Marco, on top of being really durable and having insane recovery time with Awakening, I think his flames will also get a new property, whereas his flames turn into actual fire or has a burning effect, or maybe his regeneration turns into restoration, whereas he's able to restore his body completely, where it's not even regeneration anymore, he just completely heals back to full health, you know, something of that nature. And thinking back on Marco's fruit now, if we're going by mythology, phoenixes, apart from regeneration, they actually produce actual fire, but Marco's fire doesn't actually burn as stated by Oda in the SBS. So I think it would make sense for his awakening to mimic that of an actual phoenix, where his flames regenerate but also burn as well. But again, I honestly cannot wait to see more from Marco. But what do you guys think? What role do you guys see Marco playing later in this war? Again, as I mentioned before, Marco is such a big asset, it's actually unreal. Like, having a right hand as prominent as Marco on our side is actually very promising, and one of the things we've always wanted from Marco was to see more things from him. While Marineford did show little tidbits here and there, it definitely wasn't enough. So having him back in the story is great, and I'm expecting a lot of things from him in this war. But comment down below what you guys think, like the video if you liked it, and subscribe for more One Piece content. Follow me on Twitter at Ferrospace. But it is fair, guys, and I will see you folks later. Peace.